Deace. Steve, I'm so intrigued what you're going to say about this. The New York Times points out the Rubio-Jeb Bush relationship, which we know has gone back many years. It says here, Mr. Rubio planned to enter the presidential campaign in Miami, upstaging Mr. Bush in his own backyard, signals a decisive Shakespearean turn in the 15-year relationship so close, personal, and enduring that friends describe the two men as almost family. What do you make of what will clearly be a break in that family after today?
You know, Tamara, I've got a Washington Times column coming out this week about Rubio's candidacy. I think it's the most fascinating candidacy in the race. I think it may determine who the nominee is because, you know, you've heard me say for the last couple of years here on this show, I mean, really the Republican establishment a lot of times would rather beat people like me than beat people like Robert Zimmerman. And they have proven that. I mean, the way they treat conservatives in primaries compared to the way they go after Democrats in general is kid gloves. But when you take a look at this candidacy, Jeb Bush is never going to be president. He's never going to be president. He's everything that McCain, Romney, and Dole were, and he's got a terrible last name. He's the Republican Habsburg dynasty. Nobody wants to vote for a Bush much more than they want to vote for a Clinton. And so what I think the Republican establishment has to make up its mind right now is if it actually wants to beat Democrats more than its own base. If it does, they will anoint Rubio as their proxy instead. He's far more talented, far more likable, far more intelligent, far more articulate, far more conservative without coming across as threatening. But if they're bound and determined that, hey, we hate the Steve Deaces of the world more than we hate the Robert Zimmermans of the world, then they will attempt to shove Jeb Bush down our throat. You may see the base revolt and coalesce behind a candidate like Ted Cruz instead. You may see all-out civil war in the party instead. And even if Jeb Bush were to emerge as the winner, there is no way he can win. Whatever deity the Clintons pray to, they should be on their knees right now begging the Republicans to nominate Jeb Bush. That is absolutely their best opportunity to take back the White House. It'll put the GOP in an open state of civil war.
Steve, I think your comments illustrate basically a fatal flaw in the Republican Party's and why they've lost the vote in 5 of the 6 last presidential elections. It's not about getting a better messenger, and no question, Marco Rubio is an articulate, talented messenger and a very skilled politician, but it's about the message. Marco Rubio is running on an agenda representing America back to the 1950s before he was born. He wants to deny climate change and science. He's actually he's advocating voter restriction laws that would limit the rights of minorities and also lower income people to vote, advocating legislation that demonizes the gay and lesbian community. He's not forward thinking, and that's the issue here. It's not about just the messenger, it's about having a message for the future.
But obviously you're looking
can
at
I respond to that, Tamara?
Let me hang on a second though, because obviously Robert Zimmerman, you're looking at things from your progressive lens, but I do want to bring up issues that those on the right have with Marco Rubio, because those are the things that immediately matter in this primary for the GOP nomination. Tim Mack writes in the Daily Beast, Steve, it was the excitement of the Florida Tea Party movement that ultimately transformed Rubio into a serious contender in 2009. 6 years later, Tea Party activists feel let down and betrayed by their native son. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of whether or not Democrats will ever like Marco Rubio. We probably know that not to be the case. But that he's disappointed some like yourself, Steve Deace, some Tea Party members or some on the far right. That's the headline right now. And how does he get out of that situation?
Well, you'll notice what I just said, Tamron, is he could be the establishment candidate. Because of the article that you just cited as an accurate assessment of where Marco Rubio sits with a lot of the conservative grassroots, that's why you see a lot more excitement around Ted Cruz and Rand Paul instead. I don't think he can be the conservative proxy in this race, but I think he would be a very broadly appealing establishment proxy. And if you go back to what Robert just said, we just had an election, I thought 6 months ago. Right now, if you look across the nation, there are the fewest Democrats in the legislative branch in the and state governments we've had in 86 years. So obviously a lot of the American people don't agree with Robert's characteristics of our message. The last message we just had,
Steve, we're not talking gerrymandered districts. We're talking national elections.
There's enough gerrymandered districts to go around. The reason we lost the last election, Tamara, is because we ran a corporatist who said, if we bail out the little guy in Toledo, Ohio, working the assembly line at the Chrysler plant, that's socialism. But if we don't bail out Lehman Brothers, well, then the cats and dogs are going to live together and the world's going to end. That is a message just begging to be demagogue. It's writing Robert's campaign ads for him. You can't win like that.
You've been a guy who never really followed the establishment wing of your party in any respect. respect, if Marco Rubio is what you describe as the person who could potentially be the establishment candidate, is he a guy that you would back? Are you abandoning him like some others in the Tea Party?
I think Rubio would have no problems rallying the base. Aside from the amnesty issue, which is right now hot as a sun in a GOP primary, virtually he is as conservative as they get on virtually every other issue. He's one of the most conservative members of the U.S. Senate, and he's not a corporatist. I think if he were the nominee, the base would be energized for him.
But, Steve, amongst the conservative base, Steve, will the fact that Marco Rubio supported comprehensive immigration reform and then reversed himself, will that just disqualify him because he initially supported comprehensive immigration reform?
It's why, Robert, he's not going to outflank Ted Cruz in this primary. It's frankly why Ted Cruz has a shot at the nomination. If Rubio doesn't make himself not just a supporter, but the face of Gang of Eight, then he occupies all the space that Ted Cruz occupies right now. And people I know on this network don't think he's serious. Dude raised $35 million in 2 weeks. He's serious.
Well, I think people take that seriously.
Oh, yeah? That's serious money.
Thank you both very much. I greatly appreciate it. And always great to hear Steve Deace reference a dude in this. I just don't see these things coming from you sometimes. Thank you both. Up next, lawyers for the being beaten by L.A. sheriff's deputies. And this disturbing video say an open microphone worn by the officers now raises even more questions. What police are saying about these new claims and this.
It's probably in black and white that the Ayatollah is probably right. John Kerry is delusional.
Now, what President Obama is saying about Senator John McCain's latest comments regarding the deal, the nuclear deal with Iran. This as Congress is set to debate the issue as soon as today. We'll have a live report coming up from the White House. And Texas native Jordan Spieth becomes the second youngest Masters champion at the young age of 21. We'll have details on the day after for this young man. And join our conversation online. You can find